Hello, today I want to show you how to use the Sow Easy Garden Planner. You'll see this arrow here. This is in order to pull out the slide, and this gives you instructions in case you need a quick start guide. You can scan this with QR code with your phone to get additional details and to get help determining your last frost or first frost of the year. Once you know your frost date, you can line up the arrow with your closest expected frost date on the calendar. Then you follow the weekly schedule to plant, transplant, and harvest. For example, I happen to know that my last frost is April 15th, the week of April 15th to the 22nd. So I would line it up to the calendar right there, and this tells me when to seed, transplant, and harvest various crops. You'll notice you have all your various crops on the side, and there are more on the back, and when you flip it over, it maintains its place aligned to the correct place. There's also a legend down here. So this icon, the seed and the pot, means you sow it indoors. The seed by itself means you can direct sow it in the ground. The little leafy plant in the ground means you transplant or direct sow it, but it will delay the harvest. For example, you can plant your lettuce in a pot indoors as early as February 22nd on my calendar, and then you would transplant it on March 22nd. But if you want to direct seed, you can also direct seed March 22nd, but you will need to shift this time over and account for the time that you lost between the indoor seeding and the transplant date. And finally, this is your harvest window, when you can expect to harvest. Now, you can continue to plant every 2 weeks to get a succession planting and harvest throughout the summer. Some plants do better than others. For example, carrots, which are a cool season plant, will likely bolt if you sow them in the summertime, which is why we have spring planting and fall planting. So I would follow this guide to plant my carrots in the spring, and I could direct seed them on March 15th, the week of March 15th. And then once I've harvested them, I'd give it a little break and then calculate my fall date to plant my fall crop. I happen to know that my last frost is around October 29th and November 1st. So this then tells me the last date that I can sow outdoors and still give my carrots enough time to grow before the winter. Now, there's a lot of additional information as well. You'll notice here I have minimum daylight requirements. Some plants will tolerate shade, which is helpful. For example, if you're growing a cool season crop, you can tuck it in the shade and get it extended into the hotter months a little bit more. We also have minimum soil temperature. So if you have an unseasonably warm spring or cool spring, you can get a reading on the soil temperature and know if it's warm enough to sow directly outdoors. You can also seed. This is the number of seeds required for a 10-foot row or plants. This is your planting depth. A good rule of thumb is 3 times the diameter of the seed. These are your days to germinate, and this depends a little bit on the variety. You also have thinning or plant spacing to best utilize your space and still give plants enough space to grow. Row or hill spacing. Days to harvest. Again, this depends a little bit on the variety that you're planting and the expected yield for a 10-foot row, so you can calculate how many plants you'll need to plant. We also have plant families. The plant families help you categorize what plant families your crops are in. For example, the mustard family is very common. We have Brussels sprouts, cabbage, collards, kohlrabi, and many other plants in that family, the mustard family. And they all have similar growth characteristics. And you also don't want to plant members of the same family in the same place year after year, or you may develop additional pests and diseases. So you want to rotate between crop families every few years and give them a good 3 to 4 year break to avoid pests and diseases just in general. It's that easy to grow with the Sow Easy Garden Planner. So I hope that you have a wonderful and successful gardening season this year.